Yeah, that strange robot voice, so weird. Okay, great. So we're going to start off with an introduction to Cambridge Educational Research e-journal, quite a mouthful. But we are a group of 5 Cambridge students who run this journal. So Yamna, I'm actually going to turn to you if you want to just give a quick hello, maybe explain your role.
Sure, thanks Bella, and hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome. It's nice to see people from a variety of places and not just from Cambridge. So I'm the chief editor of the journal this year, working with a fantastic team who you're going to meet on this call. And like Bella was saying, we're a group of postgraduate students at the Faculty of Education in Cambridge, and we run the journal, but we kind of accept submissions from people all over, not just from Cambridge. And the purpose of the journal is really to put out peer-reviewed education research to support early career researchers who might be publishing for the first time. And we've been really pleased with the kind of quality of volumes in past years, and just excited to see the submissions this year as well. Back to you, Bella.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Kate, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Kate. I'm the deputy editor of CERJ. So my job is to assist Yamna and help just manage the editorial process of the journal. I'm a master's student here at Cambridge, and yeah, this year we're just trying to cast a wide net. I think we're hoping to get some creative publications and encouraging different types of methodologies and just alternative forms of research. So we're excited to see what people submit.
Amazing. Thank you both. Our team is also has an amazing communications officer, amazing business manager. You'll see Emma's work on our social media. And of course, we have our funding that we have to take care of. But I round out the team as the events manager. And my job is to run events just like this, to spread the word about CERJ, what it entails, make sure people feel equipped with the knowledge they need, whether it's in submitting or during like peer review training and so on. So I manage Zoom links often. It's part of my role. But we, again, are all students at Cambridge, but that is no means reflective of the submissions that we hope to receive from across the world. So with that in mind, a little bit about the journal itself. So our full name, again, is the Cambridge Educational Research e-journal. It's a graduate-led, so I think it's amazing that it's all run by students in an effort to make research publication accessible to other students. It's based out of the Faculty of Education here at Cambridge, and excitingly, it is an open access journal. If any of this, you're like, oh, I really want to read more, we do have a website. And Yamna or Kate, do you think someone could post it in the chat? Perfect. So if you really want to read like our history of how we formed, that is on our website. But I think the main things is that it's student-led, and our goal is really to support first-time authors and reviewers. Other things that we look to do is help publish authors with the promotion of their work. Excitingly, especially if it's your first piece published in a journal, we want to get the word out, make sure people hear about the cool research that you're doing. We also are really invested in the kind of the exchange of ideas and building a community of early or first-time publications or authors, because it can feel really daunting, I think. And so what I have loved so far being part of this board is kind of the commitment to support and community building, and even when your own research can feel like you're doing it on your own. So I think part of our hope with the submission process and the review process is that you feel connected to other educational researchers from different universities and institutions. And I guess in that same vein, we also look for diverse forms of research. And especially this year, we really do want to promote different innovative methods, whether that's based in the arts or a practice-based form. We want to challenge kind of what is research. And if you have an exciting idea about that or an exciting project in the works, we would love to hear about it. And then finally, we do want to enhance rigor in the review process. Sometimes I think you can get into your head of like, oh, it's everyone's first time, so maybe it's easier to submit. And I do think we want to be supportive and accessible, while also holding ourselves to really high standards as academic researchers. And I think those go nicely hand in hand. So again, if you want to read about any more of that, or if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, check out our website. We are here for that. Okay. So you might be asking, what could this journal do for me? And hopefully if you're here, you're already interested, perhaps you maybe have a work in progress, a paper in progress that you want to submit. So our goal or our hope is that by submitting and being accepted, that you experience the whole publishing process. It gives you kind of an overview of what this entails, from submitting to peer review to the actual publication itself, and then the later promotion of like, oh, this is my finished thing. Where can it go from here? So that is one goal of ours, and perhaps helpful to you, no matter where you are in your academic career. We also believe it is kind of a mutual beneficial process because we are all working together. We have peer reviewers is a main component of our editorial process. So you are learning from others in the field, they are learning from you, and it's this back and forth relationship that again, I think speaks to the community we're hoping to make. We also want to help raise the profile of your work. I am myself, I'm a master's student, and I understand like when you're starting out in the field, or whatever your niche academic subject might be, it can feel daunting or intimidating to be like, oh gosh, wait, how do I start sharing my work? How do I start raising awareness about my work? And our hope is that by publishing through CERJ, you have an avenue of getting that started. And again, we are open access, so that means more people can read it. So that's exciting as well. And then finally, we do want you to feel part of this community. When you submit, if you are accepted, you are part of this like early time researcher group. And I think there's a lot of power in that, and a lot that you can glean from it, from our work and your work. Yamna and Kate, I don't know if there's anything you want to add perhaps about maybe why you joined, or things that stand out to you about, I guess, the power of submitting possibly to CERJ.
Sure. I mean, Bella, that was a great introduction. So thank you so much. I mean, it made me want to submit to CERJ. So for me, I realized I didn't introduce myself. I'm a PhD student working on education for refugees with disabilities, which I think just immediately off the bat saying that, you can imagine that there are lots of issues with kind of representation and research when it comes to this kind of area. I mean, you don't get refugees talking about themselves. You don't get people with disabilities talking much about themselves. Definitely don't get refugees with disabilities talking about themselves. And for me, I mean, as graduate students at the University of Cambridge, we're in like an immensely privileged position where we're able to connect with lots of other researchers and academics around the world, able to put our research out there and able to have it be taken a bit seriously. And I feel like in that position, it's good for us to be able to use what we have, our networks, our training from the faculty, to be able to push for more representation in education research more generally, not just with issues like refugees with disabilities, but for more issues as well. And like Bella and Kate mentioned earlier, pushing for more diversity in education methods, more creativity and innovation in how we do research. And for me, CERJ is a space for that, so that we can really think critically about how we communicate what we're researching.
Thanks, Yamna. I absolutely agree. As an arts-based person myself, I'm really excited about thinking about innovative methods. Kate, was there anything that you would want to add?
I guess I just want to echo what you were talking about in making sure that it's a platform for early career researchers and getting your foot in the door in the research community. And that's why I got involved, because I think it can seem very daunting to try to publish your work, especially as a student researcher. But this gives you an opportunity to do that and to put your work out into the world where anybody can access it, because it is an open access journal. So hopefully that encourages people who are feeling a little bit hesitant about sharing their work.
Totally, yeah. Thank you so much, Yamna and Kate. Let's see what our next thing is. Oh, this is just to echo what I think all three of us have been saying, but truly central to our mission is representing a wide range of voices, a variety of research experience, research fields. So again, while we are based in Cambridge, please do not make you feel that you have to be a Cambridge student to submit. We do want to encourage people from all over. Whether you're a graduate student, a doctoral student, a practitioner yourself, maybe you're a part-time, full-time student, no matter your place in the academia world, we do welcome your submission. So that's that. And actually, this might be a good time. I know we received a few questions about, does it cost money to submit? And thankfully, the entire process to submit is free. So please do submit at any time. We want to make this as accessible as possible. So there is no fee or no charge to submit a paper. So that is good. And then naturally, then you can ask, what can I submit? So there is a whole range of items that we look for. These can include research notes, ranging from like 2,500 to 3,000 words. They could be critical reviews and literature reviews. Again, run the gamut of the word count. It could be a full research paper. It could be a conference paper. I know here at Cambridge, there's an educational conference called Kaleidoscope. And so perhaps you have a material from that or a similar conference that you want to submit. So this is what is our traditional methods. You might be asking, is there something else that you want to submit and it's not on this list? I want to speak for myself. Yamna and Kate, please speak up as well. But I'd be so excited if you wanted to submit something that maybe crosses some of these channels, doesn't fit exactly in there, especially if you're challenging different methods or experimenting with different methods. So please do not feel limited to this list, but I think a lot of our academic work falls into it. Yamna and Kate, would you agree? Anything to add? Yeah, perfect. Again, if you have any questions about that or the word counts, please do throw them in the chat. All right, so I'm going to go briefly through our editorial process, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to some of our authors from the Volume 8, our last year's edition, to speak about their experience. So I apologize. I believe these ignore the weeks because the weeks are all from last year's submission round, but I love the graphic too much to not share it. So the process starts by submitting your manuscript. You do that online. There is a form on our website, which we can throw in the chat as well. You fill it out, you provide your paper. Shouldn't take you, hopefully not too long, but that is easily there. And those are due, off the top of my head, I know it's mid-April. Yamna or Kate, do you have the date? April 16th?
18th.
18th, okay, yes, April 18th. So you do have a few months until then that you could submit your manuscript. And then it will go into an editorial screening. So we'll just look at it before it goes to the first round of your review. And during the first round of your review, that's with peer reviewers, and that will go, you'll have either accepted with revisions, or we will kindly ask you, well, we will reject it with care and love for your work. And we are limited by the space of our journal, and so that is where the distinction lies. But we do hope, again, we are here to support. And so we will provide feedback on your work no matter what. If you do get revisions, then we'll ask you to revise your work before it goes into a second round of review. And again, we'll go through that process once more. And you might be like, wow, this is a lot of review periods. But the whole idea is that you want to have as much feedback on your work. And that's part of the peer review process, is to get different voices or different eyes on your own work. So that way you can improve it. And I lost my train of thought. So you can improve it from there. And I think the more you do it, you'll get different perspectives on it. And that may challenge you to think about your work in a different way. And making those small changes, I think, is a really powerful experience to go through. So that's where our thinking from there is coming. And then once you go through this whole review process, then the fun part of editing and publication comes in. And then we have our final version of our journal come out in September. So we're looking at a lot of this happening. You submit in April, the review process goes throughout the summer, and then we have our final edits in late August or throughout August before publication in September. And if you're in the Cambridge area, we do like a nice little launch. If you're not in the Cambridge area, we will celebrate with you virtually, of course. And then the whole round starts again for volume 10. So that's kind of a nitty gritty or a very rough outline of our editorial process. But if you have specific questions, please do save them for a Q&A and happy to speak in more detail. Alrighty, I'm now actually going to stop sharing. I'm going to pop it over. We have two wonderful speakers here today. Again, as I was saying, they were authors in last year's journal. So maybe I could just have you both introduce yourselves, maybe where you were last year and where you are now, and then I'll pose a few questions to you. So Lily, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Lily Stone. I'm a first year PhD student looking at tactile picture books. But last year I was on the MPhil at Cambridge Arts, Creativity and Education.
Amazing. Thanks, Lily. And Raquel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Raquel. I am a second year PhD student. Last year, I was a first year PhD student at the Faculty of Education at Cambridge.
Amazing. And Raquel, what is your research focus?
So I design models of evaluation for education programs, and I trial these models in different case studies. When I first approached CERJ 1 year ago, I think a year ago, yeah, my case studies were one in Kazakhstan, one in Romania, but the publication I submitted to CERJ was a case study in the Amazonian coast of an education program for fisherwomen. And that is what I'm doing now. So this is the area of research that I'm in, education evaluation, designing alternative or creative or different models of evaluating outcomes and impact of education programs.
That sounds amazing. Thank you. And do you want to maybe speak a little bit more about the paper you submitted to the journal?
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I wasn't sure if you're going to throw it back to Lily. So if it's
why don't we stick with you and then Lily, you're on deck.
Okay, so I'll speak a bit about the whole process and experience. So it was a very interesting journey. It was not easy at times, my relationship with CERJ last year, because it was really hard for me and my co-author, but we were very, also inspired by the dedication and high quality of the feedback we got every round. So you guys at CERJ really kept us going. And in the end, so we started off submitting a research note because I was participating with this project in parallel to what my main research was. And I had just one round of interviews. So I didn't think that we had enough for a research paper. So I submitted a research note. And that was in March. So last year, the dates were a bit different. I made a list here in case people needed to know what the journey was like. So I submitted in end of March. And for people to have an idea, it was published at the end of October. So I suppose that whatever I say the next minutes, I really hope people feel that it's worth it. It's a long journey. But this relationship with CERJ was really important for me and for my co-author, who is my field partner in the Amazonian coast. So, and then when CERJ, so the paper became something different because I submitted a research note with one interviewing my field partner. And then CERJ said, this is great, but we're not publishing a research note this year. If you're interested in expanding into a research paper, we would consider. So that came kind of like, that was a bit different. I'm not sure, this varies from year to year from what I understood. So I'm not sure how this team will deal with that. I do think it would be important to make it clear before, if you're not accepting one format, just say it in the start, just see. So then, it was because I had to collect more data. That was my point. I didn't think I had enough for a research paper, but I said, you know what, but the quality of the feedback that I got from CERJ for that research note was, you guys, amazing. So I said, you know what, let's try and do this. So I started interviewing the fisherwomen by Zoom for CERJ. Okay, I'm going to get this happening. So in the end, so to answer your question this very long way, the paper itself was actually the beginning of the evaluation model that I'm proposing for that further education program that these women are going through. It didn't begin like this, the paper didn't begin like this, but that is what the paper became at the end of October.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. I don't think I even realized the amount of, or like how it started into the final product. But I think that speaks to, again, why we have the revision process to allow it to grow from its first submission into something else. And that is part of the publication experience. So Raquel, thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah, I think that just one final thing I have to say. I think it was important, like I came from a different area of knowledge. I had published, my first master's was in experimental psychology and neuroscience. And when I was an undergrad, I published in marine biology. So using or counting on CERJ to teach me how to publish in social sciences was crucial. So even they were extremely generous, and I think that they have established a trust relationship with me and my co-author, because it can be a bit humiliating, you guys, if you submit something and it comes back with a bunch of, even though they're kind suggestions, it looks, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I shouldn't be doing this PhD in this area. This is so I think it's very important to note that there is a trust relationship. I've never felt that people was mentioning that, oh my gosh, I'm not sure she's a social scientist. She's not at all. So it was a really cool journey for me to learn how to write and publish in a different area of knowledge than the one I came before. And in the end of the process, I was even given a prize. So me and my co-author, we got the prize of the editorial board. So it was a very interesting journey, and I would definitely recommend that everyone tries, because even if your article doesn't get published in the end, you're going to get such good quality feedback that it's going to be amazing for your work and for your reflection. Thank you. I'll stop talking now.
That was terrific. Thank you so much. And I, perhaps corny of me, but I do think there's something, just the learning of it. We are all educators, or attached to education in some way. And so there is something, to me, I'm excited about the joyful part of learning throughout the process of publishing. So thank you. Lily, do you want to speak a little bit about your experience, maybe what you wrote about, how was publishing for you?
Yeah, sure. It's a bit different because I was submitting what was a kind of lit review, which I'd formulated a bit differently. I was working on collage and touch at the time, and so I structured it around a picture book about a little girl making a collage for her blind grandfather. And so I submitted a lit review that I'd had to write as part of my MPhil. So it was a 4,000-word essay looking at the literature that was going to inform what would become my dissertation, but I submitted the lit review. And when it was accepted, I worked with Samantha, who was on the editorial board last year, and we, alongside the reviewers who had it first, I kind of worked on her edits and their edits, and that all kind of went back and forth, but it was relatively straightforward. But the thing that was a bit more difficult was because I'd included this picture book, I had to get permission from their publishers to use the images, and I used large quantities of picture book text. And it was a picture book published in 1994, and so no one knew where the rights were, and that took a little while. But then after back and forth, that was also sorted because I was able to include the images in my article.
Amazing. And Lily, how was the revision process for you, the peer review process? Did you find it helpful, things you noticed?
Yeah, like Raquel said, it's very helpful to have so many different opinions and like feedback on what you've done. And I found that people were very supportive, like nothing was malicious or unnecessary. It was all very helpful. And yeah, it was a lot about clarity. I think when I've been writing, there are things that you're so in your head of what you're doing that when someone who's outside of your field reads it, their feedback on how to make it clear is very helpful. So I found that really valuable.
Amazing. And there's one more question for you both. Raquel, you said this is forming part of your PhD, or the paper. It relates to your PhD, is that right?
Yeah, actually, because of this journey, I changed. So it informed my registration report. My proposal changed because of the CERJ article. So one thing led to another. And the thing is, I submitted with my co-author, Jonas, who is this amazing guy who's there in the Amazonian coast, like setting up these programs for women to teach each other and learn as a community. So I kind of had, my driving force were the feedback from CERJ and the fact that I wanted Jonas's voice to be out there. So the thing is, I'm not sure that everyone listening would have the same, CERJ became my priority. So I put so much time and energy into making that thing happen because of the women that were behind it and Jonas that were behind it, that in the end, I asked my supervisor, I showed it to him. I said, look, the evaluation tools that I want to trial, the novelty of my PhD research is still in this case. Is it okay if I shift from Kazakhstan to the Amazonian coast? And then he said, absolutely, let's do this. So to answer your question, yes, very much so. It wasn't in the beginning of the year when I submitted the research note. There were nuances of my PhD research in the CERJ article. By October, when the article was published, and I sat my registration viva 4 days after that, that was exactly the case study that I am actually going to do field work in a month and a half. I'll send you guys a picture of me in the Amazonian coast. So yes, it's very much connected to my research now.
Incredible. And Lily, did your work have a future? Did you let it just sit in the journal? I just think it's interesting and helpful to hear about, like, where does your work go after publication?
I guess it's kind of fed into what I'm doing now, because as I work on tactile picture books, I've been writing about touch and tactile elements of collage through a picture book, and so now they've kind of fused into tactile picture books, so
cool.
A bit different but related.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much both. It was so helpful, I think, to hear about your experiences and just how they're different but similar, and maybe people or hopefully people can take away from those. A question that I had, and I realized, I think, Yamna, I'm going to pose it to you, actually. Would you speak a little bit about the peer review process? Like, who will be reading these papers?
Sure, thanks for the question, Bella. And Raquel and Lily, thanks so much for being here today. And it's actually amazing hearing your experiences. I think I'm just hearing the perspectives you shared today for the first time. So it's really fascinating, and thank you. So in terms of the peer review process, the very first step, once the article is submitted, is that the editors will review it and either desk accept or desk reject. This first step isn't a kind of expert opinion on whether the content of your article is right or wrong. It's more just like, does it fit the submission requirements, the submission guidelines on the website? Is it reasonably, easy enough to read, logical? Is it making an argument? Is it good enough to go to peer review? So that first step is kind of, it's more logistical than it is content. It's possible that at this step, we would send it back to the authors and ask for some revisions, but most likely it would just be an accept or reject and move forward to the peer review stage. So the second step would be to send it to peer review. So the peer reviewers are recruited and trained by us and assigned to your article based on their area of expertise. So they might overlap with your article in terms of methods or in terms of topic area. That's how they're assigned to your article. So 2 peer reviewers will blindly review your article. So they won't know any author details or anything about your institutional affiliation or anything about you. They'll be given a peer review guide, a kind of document that gives them some criteria to assess against. And they'll each separately review your article and either recommend it for publication or recommend it for publication with changes, or recommend that we reject it. So once we receive the peer review feedback from both peer reviewers, we'll look at it and based on the peer review feedback, decide whether we'll send it back to you for revisions, which is what happens most likely, or whether we'll reject it based on the peer review feedback, or whether we'll accept it as is, which is unlikely. So what happens then most likely is that we send the article back to you with the peer reviewer's feedback, and you'll have a certain timeline to integrate those changes. So you'll have some time to work on the changes from the peer reviewer's feedback. And yeah, so that's the third step. As the fourth step, you'll send the article back to us and we'll basically do a final round of revisions or edits. And it's the purpose of this stage is to make sure that the changes suggested by the peer reviewer have been sufficiently addressed. So say if the peer reviewer said there were some critical aspects that really needed to change for this article to be good, it's kind of making sure that those changes have been integrated. At this stage, there might be a kind of smaller round of review by the editors. And then after that, it's a pretty kind of small process, I suppose, where we might make some suggest some small editorial changes and send the final article once it's been formatted for look and feel back to you to kind of accept or reject the kind of changes we've made, but they wouldn't be any big changes at all at this stage. And then everything comes together for publication.
Exactly. Thanks, Yamna. I think it's just important to emphasize that when we are sending it off to peer reviewers, if you get to that stage, they will be people with some overlap with your work, whether that's in the topic, in the field, and maybe the research method. So that way, I think it's helpful to know who the audience that will eventually receive this. So thank you for that. At this time, I just want to give a huge thank you to Lily and Raquel for joining us today. We're going to transition to Q&A. You are welcome to stay. I completely understand if you have to dash. But with that in mind, I'm going to pull up, we received a few questions in advance. And my thinking was that I can answer them, or Kate and Yamna will divide and conquer if that works. So one question we received was, do you accept submissions that include multimedia, i.e. an embedded video component? Kate, I don't know, do you want to answer that? Take that one.
Sure. So we've had a lot of conversations about how to share different sorts of research that might not be conventional. We've even talked about podcasting a little bit and using our social platforms to do that. So while we do have a physical written copy of the journal, I think we would be open to doing other sorts of videos. I think that would be more of a conversation between maybe the reviewers and the editors and the author in that specific case. But we've had a lot of focus in our meetings about trying to make our types of research more diverse, and I think that definitely fits the bill. Yamna, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yep, agree completely with what you said.
Exactly. So excited if you include embedded video component. I would love to read. Terrific. Someone else asked, is it free to submit? It is. Would someone maybe be able to put the submission link in the chat? If you haven't come across it already, it's just on our website. And like I said, it's a pretty clear-cut form to fill out. We had another question about the formats of manuscripts that are accepted. Hopefully we have covered that at this point. We do have, if you look on our submission page, there are specific guidelines that you can read in more detail. They're a little boring and dry, I won't lie, but they are important to read as you are preparing your submission. And again, that is on our website. And that's more about like just the technicalities of formatting and so on. Finally, does it cost anything to publish? It does not cost. Alternatively, can one be paid for publishing? Yamna, I'm gonna throw that to you.
Thank you. No, we don't pay any authors for publishing. You might have heard throughout this event, we do have a prize, the CERJ Editorial Board Prize, which goes to the best article, basically. And the details of that are on the website as well in terms of how we select the best article, but it's basically about, research contribution, originality, and so on. So there is a prize, but we don't pay authors for publishing.
Terrific, thank you. And I'm broken record at this point. If you want to read about the prize, Raquel and Lily Raquel won the prize last year. Lily was our runner-up, and I'm so glad that we're here to speak to us today. But you can read about their work in more detail on our website as well. We have a question from Joe in the chat. What is the rejection rate? I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. Yamna, Kate, any?
No, I'm sorry, Joe, I don't really know how to answer that, but I will say it varies from year to year. So there isn't kind of a set number or limit of articles that need to be published, but I mean, we are keen to publish as many quality articles as we receive. So there isn't really a set rejection rate that I can give.
Exactly. And I guess related, Yamna, Kate, could someone submit 2 articles if they so wished? Is there a limit on how many submissions you can make?
No, there isn't.
Perfect. I feel like these are some obvious ones, but also so important to ask because you never know. Great. Are there any other questions? You can either throw it in the chat, you can speak aloud if you'd like, or Yamna and Kate, Raquel, since you're still with us, anything else that you'd like to add, important to speak about?
I do remember something that Lily shared about the copyrights of her work. In my case, I had to draft a little contract of data sharing because the education program that is featured in the article was part of an initiative from an NGO. So some of the pictures, the photographs, the data that are in the article, I had to arrange with the NGO about being able to publish that. And this is something that I had never done before. And there was unfortunately limited support, even though when you do get answer, not from CERJ, but from the faculty, I did reach out to some lecturers. How do you deal with that? And I think people are super busy and we don't have, we have a deadline with CERJ as authors. So I kind of had to learn it by myself and changed that. Then the NGO drafted a contract of data sharing and data protection and so on. And I changed a few things and then they signed it. So I think that that was something that it's important to keep in mind. In Lily's case, it was because she was publishing a book, from what I understood, or pages of a book. And in my case, it was because the images, some of the data were kind of property of this NGO. And they had to agree that it would be totally fine for us to publish. And this was a learning thing for me also, just to keep that in mind as an author.
So helpful, thank you. And that also, just on the note of copyright and kind of the back and forth communication between different parties. Yamna, I don't know if you want to speak on maybe about like the ethics of publication. Perhaps if your project, you had to get ethical clearance and so on, how does that relate to publishing in a journal?
Sure, I think that's a really good point. So we do have like the ethical guidelines written up on our website again, and just to talk about ethics like kind of more generally, I think in general, since we're based in the UK, we would tend to follow the BERA, British Educational Research Association's ethical guidelines, which talk about all things kind of like when do you need consent from participants to use their work, and when do you need to anonymize or kind of de-identify people's names, or when can you use their names and so on. But we also recognize that people are working in kind of diverse settings and sometimes these guidelines don't apply. So for example, in some of the settings I work, if I were to go to people and tell them to sign a consent form, that would make them really reluctant to share anything with me, because then it kind of becomes dangerous. But if it's just a relationship built on trust, then they're more than happy to share information with me, because we have this trusting relationship and they're clear about what they want to be shared in the research and what they don't want to be shared in the research. And we're aware that, with people working in diverse settings, that can sometimes be the case. So the kind of key consideration for ethical requirements is just to be very conscious and intentional about how the research is being done ethically and what the ethical issues might be, and to be very clear about that. So if it's an instance where, for example, you are using somebody's name, or you don't explicitly have a consent form with them, then it's just being very clear about why that's the case and why that decision was made.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Yamna. Hopefully that's helpful. And I see we got 2 more questions. We have what areas are covered by the journal? Anything related to education from Joe. And Joe, yes, we have a very broad scope in terms of what we accept. It's not like we have a very narrow theme that we are looking for. Rather, we encourage anything related to education. Particularly, we are welcoming innovative methods this year. Trying to think through art-based methods, practice-based methods, but please by no means feel limited to that. We just want people to feel welcome to, because we know it can be a bit unusual. But otherwise, anything related to education, and if you'd like to see perhaps some of the past issues, website, again, I'm so sorry, I keep pointing you to it, but it's a great place, and we have our archive full of the past issues, and you can get an overview of what education can mean in terms of research. Thank you, Kate, star. Great, we have another question from Nikki, and it's an excellent one. If you have a paper nearly ready, is it worth submitting early, or should you wait till the deadline? Kate, do you want to take this one?
Sure, I would say that there is no rush to get it in before it's ready. We will not start the editing process until April 18th when the submissions are due. So please don't feel rushed to, but if your paper is ready, you don't have to wait until April to submit. You can go ahead and submit it, and it'll just stay stored in our form until we're ready.
Excellent, it's totally up to you, whenever feels right. All right, any other questions? CERJ team, I'm going to suggest maybe we hang on the call, and if people want to ask us any questions, you are welcome to. Otherwise, I'm going to just say thank you for joining us this morning. I hope this proved helpful. Our email, I'll also throw that in the chat, is always open if you have specific questions you'd like to follow up there. And I will send this recording out to you all so you can watch it as well. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Hope that you'll submit.
Thank you.